Every town has a ghost story that's been passed down through the generations. But what if those legends were true? My name is Miranda Young, and I'm the Ghost Biker. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ghost Biker Garage. I'm your host, the Ghost Biker, and we have such a fun show here tonight. I know that I've had this guy on my schedule for a couple months now, and I can't wait to have him on and introduce him to you guys, because we're definitely going to have some deep discussion tonight. And I'm looking forward to seeing your comments and hearing your questions. We're really looking forward to that. So get those questions ready. And I just want to remind you, if you will, please put those questions in all caps, just so that as we're talking here and moderating and stuff, it's always helpful to make sure that I don't miss anyone as we go throughout, because sometimes we get some rapid fire questions and stuff going on. If I don't get to you right away, definitely rest assured we'll get to you here very quickly. But just want to say hello to the folks that are over here in the chat room. Thank you so much for tuning in. Nancy, it's always good to see you. Hello to Miss Sonia Thompson. Jolly Jeffers, hope you're doing well. Hello again, Mr. Bob Burnell. Saw you in the last hour on our last show. It was always good to see you. Kim Brady, how are you doing? And Randy and Denise, thank you so much for joining us. We'll get Joseph on here in just a few minutes. So if you watched the show that we did earlier tonight, we had great show on the Jailhouse Informant podcast. We talked about different pieces of evidence in our series, They Did Time. We talked about some of the different things that people who have investigated the historic Scott County Jail, what they've captured. We highlighted 3 great teams. We highlighted Tennessee Shadow Chasers. We also highlighted Rochelle from Exploring with Rochelle, and of course Jennifer. And then we highlighted the lovely Miss Candy Thompson, Paranormal Candy, who was on the show last week. Hope you guys checked that out. We had a great discussion. Candy is just such a sweet soul, and we really enjoyed chatting with her. And it was really cool to share her evidence on the Jailhouse Informant podcast. So if you missed last week's episode with her, I highly encourage you to go and check that out, because we had really good discussion. She was kind enough to share some evidence that she's captured at different locations, and that's always so much fun. That's one of my favorite things to do here, is to highlight videos and evidence from people who are out in the field doing some really great things. So definitely want to go and check those out. Let's see here. A couple different things that we've got going on. I just want to pull those up. We will be sharing this out on the historic Scott County Jail website, as well as Historic Rugby After Dark. We're going to be releasing our schedule. These are all of our schedules of flashlight tours, guided ghost hunts, haunted village lantern tours, and haunted North Village and lantern tours. So, hopefully we just really booked this schedule out, opened the calendar up for September and October at the jail and at Historic Rugby. So we hope that you'll plan to join us during this spooky season for one of these dates right here. Also, we've got paranormal investigations. We've got those open every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday while the dates last. I know we're booking up kind of quick, and we're offering an extra hour for investigations during the month of September. So hopefully you'll come on out, check us out there at the historic Scott County Jail and at Historic Rugby. Now, I just want to say that hour of extra investigation time, that is just at the historic Scott County Jail and not at Rugby. Another really cool thing that we've got going on here, let me get this pulled up, is this weekend Author J.H. Gason is going to be there at the historic Scott County Jail doing a book signing and a meet and greet. He's going to be re-releasing the second edition of his book, High Winds, Quest for Rome, which is about the Jerome Boyett and Harvey Winchester lynchings that took place there at the jail. And, that's just one of the events that took place in this book. There was a whole lead up with the Cumberland Coal Wars, and so this book is just a great book that talks about the history as well as the different events that took place during the Cumberland Coal Wars and also during the Jerome Boyett lynching. And so he's going to be there at the jail Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's at the jail. We only sell the books there at the jail. So if you have the book already, you can come in, you can take a tour of the jail and see where these events took place. And you can also go and meet Mr. Gason. If you don't have the book, we will have them for sale there. So it's going to be 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern. So hopefully you'll come check it out. I don't know if you guys caught the Haunted Discoveries episode that came out that they released. They interviewed Mr. Gason on there, and so they interviewed there at the jail. We posted some of the different screenshots and stuff that we took during the release that took place last Saturday, and it was a great episode that they had filmed there. Brandon and Mustafa, wonderful investigators, and we were honored to be a part of that. So hopefully you'll be able to check that out. And so everything was just lining up perfectly. We had those guys on the show last week at the jail. Then they released the episode, and then this week we're having the meet and greet. So, anyways, like I said, lots of really cool, fun things going on there at the jail, kicking off spooky season, and then of course kicking off Ghost Biker Exploration Season 7 is going to drop in a month. I can't believe it's almost here and can't believe it's Season 7. So get ready for some live episodes. We're going to start teasing those out and promoting those out here very, very soon. And so, it's going to be another great season. But yeah, we'll have more information on that coming up real soon. So like I said, I am just so excited to have tonight's guest on. I had the honor of meeting Mr. Joseph Escue a couple months ago whenever they had the Paranormal Places meet and greet there in Franklin, Kentucky at the Old Stone Jail. We had the opportunity to meet in person, and we spent some time there at my table chatting. And honestly, I got to say, I was just very intrigued by his theories that he has. And it's like, you've got to come on my show and talk about some of these. Talk about, we just scratched the surface when we were talking that day. So I was just very excited to have him on. And he's got a very impressive background. He's very science-minded, engineering-minded, and been involved with MUFON. Just a great resume there. If you read the bio that we posted on the show notes there, you'll find that very impressive background. But you don't need me to tell you this. You need to hear and experience this for yourself. So if you will, please help me in welcoming Mr. Joseph Escue. Hey, Joe.
Thanks for having me on here.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to come on tonight.
Oh, I love it. I've been excited about it. This is the first time I've ever actually got to present any of these things, to the public. And I would also like, for anybody that wishes to give me some feedback. But my entire life has been a paranormal experience because at the age of about six, I had an accident, and I actually severed my left thumb and bled to death.
Oh, wow.
And it just happened that my mom had rushed me to the ER. My grandfather was driving, and all this was going down, and it was just a county hospital. I mean, my people didn't have a lot of money; they were just working class. And it just happened there was a German doctor that was visiting the hospital that day that told my mom, he said, "I think I can do something." And so he reattached that, and he resuscitated me. And up to a point, if anyone has read or talk to a lot of near-death experiencers, you'll find that there are certain things in common. There's the out-of-body experience, looking down on yourself, seeing people doing things around you. That was pretty much my experience there. I could see the doctors, the nurses, the surgeon doing his thing. And unlike some people, they say, well, they see a bright light, a tunnel, this sort of thing. In my case, I mean, I was, pardon the pun, scared to death. I mean, I'm dying, right? And but all of a sudden, it was just it's indescribable sense of serenity. It's like, hey, there's nothing to be afraid of. Everything's gonna be fine. And then kind of like the old black and white TV picture tubes, when you turn those things off, the picture just went down to a little point
Mm-hmm.
out, and that was it. And then after that, I was in this brightly lit place that couldn't tell where the light came from. Everything was just bright. It was just lit. No shadows, no nothing. And I had, of course, being a kid, I interpreted things, from a kid's perspective. It was this lady that I thought was in like a white nurse's outfit that was with me during my entire time in that realm. And she showed me things. And a few things I can remember, most things I can. And I do remember that I didn't want to come back, and I was told that I had to. And next thing I know, I'm waking up in the ward, and my mom tells me that I had been in a coma for a little over a week, and they didn't think I was going to survive.
Just one second, Joe. It sounds like your audio's cutting out just a little bit.
Okay, let me get a little closer.
That's much better. That's
Does
much
that
better.
work better?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Thank you, Aaron.
I'm using this old laptop, and I'm trying to get situated so that everything works.
Nope,
Okay,
you're fine. Thank you. I didn't
okay,
want to interrupt, so please go on.
okay. Anyway, and she told me years later. She said that things were just different about me. She didn't really know what to do. I wasn't normal, but she said it was like one person went into the hospital and somebody totally different came home.
Wow.
And for a long time, I was ambidextrous because they had me doing exercises kind of like they would do today.
Hmm.
When you lose a finger, a hand, or whatever, just fencing it up and everything. And so for a long time, I could use the left hand as well as I did the right. And one day I'm sitting on the back porch. My dad had a 49 Plymouth.
Okay.
I 6 years old. And I just said, I'm going to draw Dad's car. Well, I drew a 49 Plymouth. And when I started to school, it freaked the teachers out because I never drew stick figures like most children. I drew full-bodied human figures that looked
Wow.
like. And how did you do that? I don't know. I just did it. And they tried to talk my mom into putting me in a school for gifted kids. And at that time in Nashville, the only place that existed that had any such program was a Catholic school. And she didn't want me going to a Catholic school. And of course, but years later, when I'm a teenager or whatever, and I'm becoming more aware of all this, I'm asking questions about why this, why did you know? And her excuse was, "You're gonna have to learn to live with normal people, and the best way to do that is go to a regular school." And I think sometimes it probably was because they didn't have the money for that anyway. But she also said, "I didn't want you confused about your religion." I'm like, "Hey, I'm 5, I'm 6. My religion is Easter Bunny and Santa Claus."
Right.
But things got weird after that because I had, well, they just said wherever I was at, strange things happened. I just attracted things. And I could look at certain things and see relationships and things that other people couldn't see, which has helped me, in my profession because I work, as a software engineer and dealing with that sort of thing. I work with things that you don't see. And So I can do pretty much whatever I want to with a machine. Mess around with electronics and stuff, and weird things happen. Anyway, I'd always been fascinated with aircraft.
Hmm.
So eventually, I became a private pilot for a little while until I had vision problems and couldn't get them fixed, and they pulled my license. But I'd stayed Aerospace Science for a couple of years. So, and I still follow that because I love it. But anyway, in a in a nutshell, that leaves out a whole bunch of stuff. But that's kind of how I got into this. And all my life, where other kids are like out playing baseball and stuff like that, I'm not interested in it. I'm going to the library and finding books on the weirdest crap you can think of and reading them, right? Because I just love that stuff. And so over the years, that led to different things. I did a lot of independent research, and then I started hooking up with some paranormal people and getting involved in that. And eventually, I was with MUFON for maybe about 4, 5 years. And the last year or so that I was there, my wife, she'd not been doing too well, and working with MUFON is like a full time job without a paycheck. And I just had to start cutting back on stuff, so I backed away from that. But I had made it up to Chief Investigator for the state of Tennessee
Wow.
for a while. And of course, having studied aerospace science, I pretty much knew aircraft, that sort of thing, and I could look at stuff. I'd say 99% of the cases you get in MUFON are people don't know what they're looking at. Yeah. And you have some folks that, they're receptive to, okay, well, I know what this is. I can explain it. This is this phenomenon. This is this thing. Or I think you saw that. And you're like, okay, well, now that I understand this, I'm cool. But then you also have those people occasionally that, oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about. I know I saw aliens. And I'm like, okay. And one of the funniest cases I had, my wife used to sit in on some of the investigations, just kind of as an observer. She'd go along with me because she just liked watching the show. And we had this one guy in Sparta that was really interesting because he had taken basically butt photos with his phone of ice crystals on his windshield, and he thought they were glowing UFOs. And but I mean, that's not all that unusual. But the really, really funny part is you're trying to be respectful, you're trying to be serious, and be professional. And sometimes it's really hard to do because this guy firmly believed that there were aliens disguised as humans shopping at the super Walmart. And I'm like, okay, why would aliens come all the way here to shop at Walmart? Of course, when you go to Walmart, you kind of wonder, are these people, some of these people are really
Right.
humans, right?
Right.
But you do get your share of fights and that sort of thing. But you got to be serious about it. But yeah, you run into all kinds. But that's part of the fun for it for me is I get to meet a lot of different people,
Yeah.
and I've met some really intelligent people that had some really interesting experiences. And I actually know 3 abductees that I worked with, and one of them never reported anything to MUFON. I just know this because I was friends with the guy because he was into doing paranormal investigations when I met him, and we got talking. He said he never reported it because he didn't trust me. And
Mm.
he's actually been on some of these TV shows like Ancient Aliens and stuff like that. But we were talking about it one day, and we decided that there are certain commonalities between certain types of hauntings and abduction experiences.
Okay.
And over the years, we would discuss this and some of the things that I've encountered. He encountered in the context of an alien abduction. And I'm like, that's really interesting. So you have to wonder, are these things actually related?
Mhm.
And near-death experiences. Okay, like you know, things walking through walls, apparitions. Uh, then you have apportation, which is something in one room disappears, and you find it in the other room, and nobody moved it. So how did it get there? Or it
Hmm.
just goes away and it comes back later. That's happened to a camera that my brother in Gallatin had, and he had me to look at it. He said, "I can't explain this." He said it had batteries in it. I just put them in there, taking a few pictures, stayed on top of the refrigerator, and neither him or his wife could find it. It was just gone. 3 months later, the camera shows up. Like, okay, let's see
Hmm.
what's on here. It took any photos while it was in La La Land. Everything on the camera had been erased, including the
What?
pictures that he took before it.
Huh. What's your thought on that?
I can't explain it, but now on my Facebook page for Blue Light, I have shared some photos and things. A lot of
Mhm.
stuff that I've done has been for individuals. It's been private, so I can't publish and
Sure.
display it, unless they sign a release. And my policy is that since I worked in for the Department of Health and Healthcare for a long time and everything, well, I worked another day, but that's what I retired from. I treat it like anybody would, HIPAA data,
Yeah.
need to know only.
Yeah.
Everything's confidential. And, but, yeah, I've seen weird stuff like that. And, I mean, I don't understand cameras. They disappear, they reappear. What was on them's gone. Of course, batteries are drained at that point. In his case, the batteries were like they had just been put in there. Batteries weren't even drained. But there was absolutely nothing on the camera and it'd been missing.
That's wild.
During that time, my sister-in-law reported seeing a shadow figure in the central hall.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure what to make of shadow figures because the first time I encountered one, it walked through me and I got sick as a dog. You ever felt like every orifice in your body had to exude something at the same time? And
Oh,
it's
wow.
like you feel like an electric charge going through you, like you just grabbed hold of the post of a 12-volt battery. You're like, I gotta leave, dude. I mean, I'm not feeling too good.
Yeah.
And the lady that was behind me, it passed through me and through her too, and it had a similar effect. But we both had to leave
Wow.
because and I think we sat outside of this location for maybe like over an hour before we started feeling normal. Okay, lesson learned: do not make physical contact with shadow.
Do you think that shadow figures are or shadow people are just kind of the way we as humans see them, or do you think they are a phenomenon in and of themselves?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I've got several thoughts on that, and I myself am not even sure which one to go with. First one is like you said, it's an entity, but that is the way we perceive it because of the way our senses operate. But then another one is what if it's something that's interdimensional and it's not fully manifest in our dimension? It's just kind of like stuck in limbo between the
Mhm.
two. It's not in one or the other. And that's the reason why we see it as a shadow instead of a defined figure. Not
Okay.
completely here and obviously not completely there.
Mhm.
And, where'd it come from? But yeah, I'm still working on shadow figures. I'm not sure what to make of that. I mean, is it actually an entire entity that's just kind of dropped in to aggravate people? Or
Right.
is it something that's trying to come through and doesn't completely make it?
And I like both of those theories because, I feel like as humans, there's things that, just the human eye, we can't optically see certain things or we see it certain ways. And so I can understand that maybe they're so bright that that's how that appears, they appear as shadows. Um, I've also heard several theories about it being a vibrational thing that we're not matching vibrations, so we're seeing it differently. And then I've heard the interdimensional one. I'm like you, I don't really know. I don't think they're evil. I know some people tend to think that all shadow figures are evil. I don't think that's the case. But they very well could be interdimensional. And it's just either it like you said, either not fully manifesting or it's kind of something, that's how we see it as it's in another dimension. I think those are all valid theories.
Yeah, Tesla said if you wanted to understand the universe, you had to think in terms of frequency and vibration. And I think that is a key here. And I have played around with frequencies, and
Mhm.
18.89 hertz is often called a ghost frequency. And that's one of the things that I do in investigations is, having some knowledge of electrical engineering and stuff. First thing I do is rule out environmental factors.
Sure,
A
sure.
lot of times I have found, situations where maybe there's a furnace leaking carbon monoxide or whatever that can cause hallucinations, headaches. Just look it up; it can make you sick.
Mhm.
Uh, and then the thing about the fear frequency is somewhere between 13 and 18 hertz, and people exposed to that basically experience paranoia, delusions. They will see things. And if you've got like a faulty breaker box or wiring or something in a house, and I've seen instances of that, and like tell people, okay, you're seeing shadow figures, and you think one pushes down the steps and stuff in the basement. And I'm like, the only thing I'm getting down here is I'm getting, your 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 wiring is leaking some serious electricity here. Some EMF.
Mhm.
People are sensitive to it more so than others. Some it has no effect on. Some it can cause migraines and all kinds of stuff. And they're like, get that fixed. And
Yeah.
then they do, and all their problems go away.
Mhm.
And I have seen, several environmental things. But then, while that's fun, and I really enjoy being able to solve, like a guy at work had a situation where he kept having these headaches. They'd start about the same time every day, about 11 o'clock, and they would get so bad he'd just have to go outside, and sit somewhere and then come back in and work. And I'm looking, and there's a fluorescent light above his cue.
Ah.
So I brought a couple of my meters in, and I'm checking this. Okay, they need to replace the ballast on this thing because this thing is spiking on my EMF meter. And I had to argue with our boss there. You need, well, it's not blown, maintenance. I really believe that's what's causing Bob's headache.
Mhm.
And so we kept on, kept on. Finally, we got somebody that listened to us, had maintenance up there, and they swapped all that stuff out. And guess what? No more migraines.
Stopped.
Now, I feel good when I do stuff like that, but the thing that keeps me coming back is the stuff that I can't. And so, yeah, there's a lot of common things. But, back on the shadow people and things like that, you have to consider that if something is multidimensional, then you're going to be dealing with frequency. Because
Mhm.
actually, when you look at it at an atomic level and get down to quantum physics, there's a lot of space in atoms. And of course, if you understand chemistry,
Mhm.
you got molecules. Molecules are composed of atoms, certain combinations create certain elements. But if you actually get down to that level, at the quantum level, you'll find that there is a ton of space in these things. And one theory is that like things that can pass through walls.
Yeah.
The reason why it can do that is because of the frequency that it vibrates with. It allows its atoms to pass through the other object without making contact. Now, if you're going through there and you get out of sync, you're going to find yourself embedded in the wall,
Mhm.
and that kind of brings up something like the stories about the Philadelphia experiment. Supposedly,
Okay.
crew members embedded in the deck and all this stuff. Now, how much of that is true, I don't know. But it's a cool story, but that would kind of explain it. These guys are vibrating at a frequency that they start passing through objects, and then either they quit or the frequency changes and they get stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but one thing I started doing with investigations is I use a Geiger
Yes.
because I found a lot of times in places where there's actually legitimate activity occurring, I'll find a spike in gamma rays.
Okay.
Don't know why, but it's there. And I remember one time I was at Octagon Hall when I was with Night Stalkers. I was there when they did all their novice. We had this one guy there who, uh, he uh, he had, I mean, he wasn't like totally disabled or anything like that, but he kind of bordered on special needs category. Really
Okay.
nice guy, whatever, and he was all into this. And I just kind of kept an eye on him because that was part of my job. You let the guests come in, they do a ghost hunt like on TV or whatever. You just make
Mm-hmm.
sure that nobody gets in trouble. They obey the rules. Just kind of watch after. And I was watching after this boy, really nice kid, uh, not very sophisticated, but things started happening around.
Okay.
And every time it did, my Geiger. And I
Huh.
followed this guy no matter where he was at the hall. When something happened to him, I would get that. The only thing that I could conclude is whatever's going on here, something must like him.
Right. Right. Well,
But
and oh, go
so,
ahead. I was just going to say, the frequency thing is something that really fascinates me because I'm a big believer in binaural beats and different frequencies, using frequencies for stress relief, headache manifestation, that sort of thing, and it works. I mean, you can literally take a glass of water and play different frequencies and see how the vibration from the frequencies affects the water. And so, if you think about, how much percentage the human body is made of out of water, how these frequencies truly affect and react on people, it's really kind of mind blowing when you look at it. And we often experiment with that sort of thing at the jail to see if, different frequencies do stimulate different types of activity. And it's weird, we've had REM pods go off to try to match the frequency that we were using. And then we've also had some where if we sit and played it, we would get knocking on doors and doors slamming. Now, I don't know if the amount of the frequency tends to increase the intensity of the behavior, or if it just, I don't know why it works, but I know why it works on the human body, but I don't know why it works on the spiritual body.
well, then you would be interested in this. There was an experiment that was done years ago. I don't remember the details or anything, but I think it was called the Philip experiment. And it was
Okay.
done by the psych department at one of the universities up north. Basically, what they did is a group of guys, they leased an old house, and they went there once a week, and they sat there, and they made up a character, a
Okay.
fictitious person.
Okay.
They had his history and everything, and they went there, and they talked and they acted and focused on the idea that this fictitious character is real and that he lived in this house. And after a few weeks of this, they called the experiment off and shut it down because things started happening. And
Okay.
they couldn't explain it. And it was like, they were encountering something. They had created something there just by thought. And the thing about that is that, you know, I mean, the mind generates an electric field and different frequencies. I mean, you got gamma waves, beta waves, all this kind of stuff. It all has to do with your quality of your sleep, your ability to remember, and all this sort of thing. So you understand that with binaural.
Hmm.
But what I'm thinking is water actually can store data, memory. And
Okay.
if you Google water is memory, water has memory. some other things. You can find some really interesting videos, documentaries on this, and there's been a lot of really interesting experiments on how just thought and words can affect water. It doesn't change the chemical composition of the element. What it changes is it changes the quality and the form of crystals when you freeze the water.
Okay.
You know how, like with snowflakes, you get all the different crystals. Well, apparently, and nobody can explain this, because part of this may go into quantum physics too, but apparently anything that ever touched water, water retains an imprint. And there was the French medical doctor Luc. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name correctly because I don't speak French. Montenay, Montenay, or something like that.
Okay.
You can find him easily because he's the guy that discovered HIV virus.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And he started around 92, I think it was. He found that water, well, it is an electrical conductor. It's pretty much neutral. It doesn't generally generate an electric field, not on its own. And he discovered that it was generating weak electrical fields. And he got fascinated by it, and he went to playing with it. He did it for several years. He actually got ostracized by the institute that he worked for, and he ended up moving to a trailer at the end of the parking lot to do his work on this. But it's actually developed into a field of research now because he found that he took an HIV patient, took a DNA sample from him, exposed pure water to this
Okay.
DNA sample, and it started generating a electrical field that he detected.
Okay.
And so he actually recorded that as a sound bite on a computer. He
Okay.
convinced a university in Italy to take this, and he gave them specific instructions how to take that sound bite, play it, and expose pure water to it to see if it picked that up and retained it. Oddly enough, it did. So then the next question is, can we reconstitute that DNA from that signal?
Okay.
It was a 98% match. They
Wow.
reconstituted the DNA from nothing but that water that had been exposed to that signal from the HIV. And the only thing I can tell you about it is it's the same process that they do for PCR,
Okay.
when they're looking for viruses and infections, things, or sometimes they'll use that technique, for crime scenes to get DNA matches. But basically, water created a memory of that infected DNA. It was transferred by a soundbite to a computer somewhere else, hundreds of miles away, that exposed another container of pure water to it that picked that signal up and replicated it with 98% accuracy. And they basically reconstituted that DNA from nothing but water.
So when
Water
we
has memory, and I'll get to this later,
uh-huh.
but I just want to tell you that this plays heavily into my theory about how psychic.
Okay. Okay. So is it fair to say that whenever people say that water is a conductor of energy, it's maybe not so much a conductor of energy, but more so a conductor of memory? Would that be
Possible. I do know the Russians have done. There's a documentary. I think it's just called Water, and I think you can find the full thing on YouTube. But
okay?
there was some Russians, a couple of Japanese researchers, and a Chinese guy that were conducting experiments along that line with water. The Russians claim that water from different parts of the planet has its own peculiar memory, or whatever you want, and they can identify, and it's in everything that originated from there, whether it's people, animals, whatever. Because our body is 77% water, and if you take the water content of the organs that are in it, we're actually about 90% water.
Wow.
And if water can retain memory of anything that it was ever exposed to, like it did the DNA from HIV patient, what other memories does the water in our bodies retain? And water is pretty common. Even in the most arid parts of the planet, you can still find some water. And so, what data is being restored here? So, if you look at it from a religious point, something about the earth will bear witness.
Hmm.
Well, maybe that's what it meant when it said the earth will bear witness, because all this water, what, 75% water? What kind of memories does the oceans have of us?
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, and then does it depend on the type of water?
uh, yeah, I think so, because the Russians went so far as to involve a priest who blessed some water as holy water, and I don't know how they measured the energy potential of it, but they said that the holy water had about 500 times the energy level of plain
Wow. Okay.
water. Yeah, but
Well,
anyway, one of my theories, and I want to talk to you about this, see what you think regarding the way you know you'll see psychics that go in, and I can pick up impressions from objects
mhm.
sometimes. Not always, but sometimes I can. Like if I go into my house, I know when somebody else may have been there that I didn't know they were there because I sense somebody's been here. Or I can sometimes pick up objects and get impressions from them.
Okay.
But I think what it is due to the level of sensitivity to EM fields that individuals have. I think when you have water, you have a traumatic event, a murder, somebody who had his head shot off in the Civil War. Well, the body generates that magnetic field. Energy is never destroyed, changes form. And if people are agitated, who knows the level of energy that their brain is emitting?
Mhm.
And then when they die, it's dissipated into the environment. That's my
Mhm.
theory. So if there's like limestone or something, which usually has a lot of water in it, they're around where this happens. That energy is going to be absorbed by
Mhm.
them. Now, presumably over time it can dissipate, but under the right conditions, I think if you have people that are hypersensitive to that energy, they can read it. That's the reason why you get these psychics that they never give you specific details. What they describe are impressions of things because that's all they can get from it. It's not like, it wrote a novel and it's stored in the water molecules and rocks around here, but they're picking up impressions of this, somebody was shot. You know how they work.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe these people are actually reading this water memory in the environment. I don't know.
No,
Kind of
I
wild, but
no, that's actually really interesting. Um, and I hadn't really thought about that because I've always sort of wondered where the impressions come from because a lot of psychics will say their spirit guides gave them the information. But actually, I mean, it would be interesting to see because, like, I know they're at the jail. I'm just using that as an example. You're inside of a sandstone structure, and there's sandstone, there's iron. Um, it essentially acts as a giant Faraday cage whenever you're inside there. Keeps a lot of the natural environment out of inside the entire building. Um, but we also have New River runs, back in behind there. And at times is a pretty big rushing river back there. When we have a lot of water, there's a waterfall right there. Um, that actually makes a lot of sense to me that they're picking up on these impressions. So I wonder if the type of building that you're in, if it's somewhere that essentially would be somewhere that had water that could store these memories. if that would help in picking, the psychics to be able to read those impressions, pick up on those impressions better.
Yeah, there's, another thing that plays into this is years ago, I know some of these guys, I've met them occasionally. I mean, I'm nobody to them, but I talk to everybody. And I think they had a program on cable called, I think it's called Ghost Lab,
Okay.
but they had a couple of their guys that were really good with instrumentation. And they did an experiment in Mississippi where this plantation house, 2 stories, your classic colonial kind of plantation house, but there was there was like a dike or something along. It was set off of a river,
Yeah.
and the way it was positioned is that on the lower floor of the house, that embankment pretty much blocked the view of the river, the water in it.
Okay.
But on the upper floor, you could look right out and see the river, right?
Okay.
And they found something really interesting. The lower floor of the house, there was no activity. The upper floor was hot.
Really?
And the idea is that, you know, it's water. Wherever you got water, you got railroad tracks. These things conduct stuff. There's
Mhm.
always paranormal activity associated with it. The light reflecting off of the river onto the upper floor of the house provided that conduit for whatever energy was in that river that fueled the activity on the upper floor, while the lower floor, which was not in view of the river, was pretty much dead.
Huh.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And so they were able to actually, I guess, measure that. And I
Yeah,
guess that could actually explain why, because we had a question earlier asking, what area of the jail is the most active. You could translate that to that location, what area of that house or that plantation is the most active. I wonder if that changed based on the view of the river.
it would be interesting to rig up some sort of experiment where you could actually test
Mhm.
that. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot of things here. Um, and I had been to Bobby Mackey's. Everybody goes
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
I didn't really pick up on anything. It just felt weird.
Mhm.
But I mean, I'm used to weird. But yeah, a perception is another thing too, because like the Philip experiment.
Mhm.
I believe that we are far more powerful than we realize that we are. Because some of the water experiments that the Japanese did, he would have water, he'd go in there and he'd have people tell it that we love it and all this kind of stuff, and it's great. And it would form these beautiful, perfect crystals. And then in the other sample, they'd go in there and they'd say hateful things to it. And the crystals that formed they were just twisted, didn't look quite right.
Mhm.
And we know that plants can respond to people. You go in there and
Yes.
you care about plants and stuff, they tend to bloom, green, all that stuff. If you go in there and you yell at them, scream at them, whatever, well, like water.
Mhm.
So negative and positive emotions has an effect on everything. And if it can do that on water, then what are we doing to each other?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, my business partner and I, Christy, were talking the other day about this, and her dad, has the theory about the trees absorbing the energy and almost acting like a recorder. Um, and I can see that because it's almost like, I've seen the different experiments where people will talk to their plants and their gardens and everything. And you can imagine some of these trees seeing, that were there during Civil War battles that saw, dramatic trauma and experienced some of these different natural events, earthquakes, tornadoes and stuff that happened and death and destruction. I would almost imagine anything like that could absorb these emotions and essentially record these events.
Yeah. And particularly traumatic events, because I
Mm,
mean, uh, you've got an adrenaline rush, and who knows what other chemicals are spiking all through your body. Your mind is
yeah.
generating this field, and all of a sudden, it's not in your body anymore. So it
Yeah.
goes somewhere,
Yeah.
and I think it gets absorbed into the environment, and that's how I think that's just like different people, EM fields have different effects on. Some has no effect whatsoever. Some of them it just makes them really sick, and then
Hmm.
most somewhere in the middle. And I think that maybe when you have these people that can go into a place and walk through it and they pick up these impressions, I think what they're doing is I think that they're tapping into that water. It's telling them what was there, and that's probably the reason they don't get like you know great detail. Why their descriptions tend to be so general and nebulous is because they can't get that kind of detail out of it. Maybe it does. Maybe that kind of detail doesn't exist. Maybe it's just a general impression that gets recorded, or maybe it's there, but they're not capable of picking up on the detail
Yeah.
part of it. And I've done a couple of experiments which were questionable about about your mental ability to affect the environment.
Okay.
And I also know that it can affect you personally because back when in my 20s, I was involved in the martial arts. I mean, I wasn't Chuck Norris or anything like that. I came close to winning a couple of matches, but no cigar. But anyway, when we come to the part where we're like breaking objects, everybody's got to break a board, right?
Yeah.
I understood the science. I understood the anatomy. I understood all of the technical. But no matter how hard I tried, I just banged the crap out of my knuckles every time I tried to bust one. And I was getting really frustrated with it. And since they kept trying to tell you don't have the right mindset, it's good that you understand the technical stuff, but you've got to have the right mindset. And one night, after months of bruised knuckles and stuff like that, I'm not ever going to be able to do this. I just went in. I was tired. I was exhausted. I wasn't overthinking, which I tend to do with everything. And for some weird reason, it just fell in place. And I uh, I broke a 2x4 with my
Wow.
little bony fist. Whoa! And he comes over. He said, "That's because you have the right mindset." After a couple of times of doing it, I could do it without even thinking about it. And what I realized is it's not understanding the science or the technical aspects, the anatomy, the physics, or anything like that. It's a question of what you believe.
And I guess that could be what's applied to paranormal investigating in general of what we
Yeah.
experience. I'm a firm believer that you get back what you take in.
Mhm.
And that's why your intentions and your setting your goals for what you want to do and clearing your mind and not being stressed or overthinking and going in with the right intentions. I think that affects the activity, and this is just me personally. I think that affects the activity more than any moon phase or any weather phenomenon. It's if you're trying to initiate communication and you don't have the right mindset, or if you come in with something totally negative and not grounded and not going in, again, like you said, not having the right mindset, I think that's going to affect the type of activity you get if you get any activity at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you on that. And I think based on, I don't know, I've spent probably, 12 years pretty much working out of Octagon Hall studying that,
Mhm.
plus all the other things that I've done.
Yeah,
And I've noticed that a lot of times what you get out of a location depends on how you went in.
that's right.
And the thing is I kind of have mixed feelings about an investigation where beforehand I've given a ton of information.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, so that whether you want it to or not, that's going to create expectation.
Mhm.
And then you have that self fulfilling prophecy. thing working, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, I don't think it's good to go in completely blind in case there's something dangerous you need to prepare for.
Yeah.
So the thing of it is you got to reach a balance where you don't prejudge anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're prepared in case something happens that's not too good. But at
Right.
the same time, you want to be open enough that whatever actually is there is what you get. You don't want to
Yes.
carry something in, and you don't want to bring anything out. So I think mindset and attitude is really, really important. And some of the people that I've had that wanted to go with me, I tell them, if you don't have a positive attitude and you're open, then you don't need to go in there.
Exactly.
Especially in a place that I've been in before and I know pretty much what they're going to run into.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of activity and stuff is based on what you expect. And, it's the self fulfilling prophecy thing.
Mm-hmm.
I go in there, oh, yeah, I'll get jumped by this, or something's gonna possess me or whatever. Like, well, if that's what you believe, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's a good chance that's what's going to happen. Don't go in there thinking like that. Go in there thinking, okay, it's like going to a party or something. Why you go? I'm going there to meet people and have a good time. I'm not going in there to hate anybody or to try to make people react in a certain way. I'm just going in there to see who's there and meet these people and get to know them. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what you need to do when you go into a location. You're there to meet whatever's there and get to know it. You're not expecting it to be mean. You're not expecting it, to
Mm-hmm.
be especially good to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And that's why. So, yeah, if you're not in a good mood, not feeling good, you're in a negative state of mind, you probably don't need to be going out tonight.
Exactly. And well, and you kind of jump back, you really hit on something that I've heard about with other locations when you were talking about them going into, acquiring this real estate and going in there and essentially telling these stories. I think that happens more times than not at locations that essentially, I guess it's kind of like creating a tulpa, if you will, or going in and sort of manufacturing your own haunting that I feel like if people and Bobby Mackey's is an example of this, is that there were these stories that surrounded Bobby Mackey's that were not quite accurate about the location itself. And because so many people were coming in there and telling these stories. Now I'm not saying it's not haunted by no means, because there's definitely some things in there. But did some of these entities either take on the persona that they were hearing about because of the stories circulating, or did almost like the collective conscious create some other haunting that was never associated with that location? And I think that we see that more often than not I mean, the jail's not a good example of this because the jail had hundreds of thousands of people come in over its 100-year period. You could be picking up activity from somebody who spent one night in there back in, 1947, and that's it. There's no real record of that. There's so many people. But when you start drilling down to houses or locations that have specific stories tied to them, when people start getting other things and these stories start evolving, I think sometimes they essentially manufacture hauntings in some of these places unintentionally.
Yeah, I think that can happen a lot. And, so it's important to try to maintain some kind of neutrality and not to create a lot of expectations. I
Mhm.
mean, if you're going in there expecting you're going to find something, that's fine.
Mhm.
But if you've got like specific ideas, oh yeah, I'm going to be this, and that, I think a lot of times you create
Yeah.
that, and you don't really want to do that. But I think that people, back to again to the water memory thing and all,
Mhm.
and I've seen recent studies where, nobody's ever been able to accurately define what is consciousness, right?
Mhm.
But I've been reading some recent material where they're saying that they think the reason for that is that consciousness is multidimensional.
Really?
The reason we can't get a hold of it is because it doesn't exist wholly and I heard somebody go so far as to say that consciousness itself actually is ingrained with the fabric of space and time.
Mm.
And if that were the case, I think that would answer a lot of questions because you have people that say, well, I've gotten messages from dead people. Well, what'd you get? You got it from a consciousness. But if that is the case and consciousness is multidimensional and it is actually part of the fabric of the universe, then it just makes sense to me that, yeah, you can pick up messages from anybody if you're a person that can do that. Because it's kind of like Einstein's spooky activity at a distance or, quantum entanglement. You got
Mhm.
these things that are related and the distance between doesn't even play in as a factor. Something happens to A, it immediately happens to B. So,
S So
you
is
know,
that
uh,
conscious intelligent?
yeah. And if you look at it from that standpoint, you could probably go so far as to say that the universe is intelligent. So if these, maybe that's what God is. You have some people say, oh, yeah, we live in a simulation. We exist in somebody's mind. I don't know about that. But if consciousness is multidimensional and it is part of the fabric of space and time, then in a sense, yeah, because whatever the universe is thinking, that's what we are. Assuming it is intelligent. But yeah, and one of the things that I do recently, which I think this plays into it too, is that having been a pilot, I'm fascinated by weather. I actually ran 3 weather stations here.
Mhm.
My wife told me they need to hire me to forecast the weather because I do a better job than the guys on TV. And I'm getting ready to put up a new one, a professional model that hopefully I'll be feeding data up to like Weather Underground or some of these guys.
Okay.
But also, I've been following a group called Suspicious Observers
Okay.
because I wanted to get the reports on space weather. I mean, space has weather; it's not empty. I
Mhm.
mean, right now we're approaching solar maximum, so we got a lot of sunspot activity, and there is an electrical connection between all the planets and the sun.
Okay.
And this extreme weather that you're seeing now is a result of that. They've actually gotten where within 3 days of a large enough solar flare, we can predict earthquakes
Oh,
and
wow.
volcanic activity.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and we're refining that, and it's actually pretty interesting stuff. And we've also had some medical studies that show that the EM emitted by the sun, the solar flares, coronal mass ejections, actually has an impact on people and animals. You've seen reports here lately of like flocks of birds diving into the ground.
Mhm.
Nobody knows why, or certain fish are not going to their spawning area; they're going somewhere else. That's because there's magnetic poles are in the process of reversing. They do that about every 12,000
Okay.
years. And as it does, the Van Allen belt, which basically acts like a force field that protects the Earth from radiation from the sun and everything, gets weaker, so more radiation gets through. And if you listen, I know ham radio operators, they listen to space weather because certain solar flares of a certain intensity can actually black out radio communication. And when we had the auroras that were visible down here a few months
Mhm.
back,
Yeah.
it knocked out radio communications and it also took out the GPS satellites for a couple of days.
Wow.
And that was a factor in a couple of plane crashes, believe it or not. But the really interesting thing is we're about a year away from solar maximum, and then things will start dying down because the magnetic poles of the sun flip every 11 years. And we're getting close to the end of this cycle, so this is 25, we'll be going to 26, so things will start coming down. But what they found that I think is really interesting, you kind of feel like the world has lost its mind these last few years.
Uh-huh.
It has, because what they found is that this level of activity from the sun can cause violent and behavior and irrational thought in human beings, and it even interferes with animals' migration patterns for mating. Like all the whales that got beached a while back and nobody knew why.
Yeah.
Well, their GPS was screwed up. They were headed for their spawning grounds. Instead, they ended up on a beach somewhere. And so, yeah, all the violence there. And there was a guy, what was his name? Think a minute. Edward Dewey in 1971 picked up on the work of a Russian guy who wrote a book in 1918 where he was studying the solar cycles and behavior and historical events.
Okay.
And he found that 80% of wars, uh, revolts, and violent behavior is associated with solar maximum. Most of the major wars have occurred during this time period of solar maximum. People have been most irrational and violent during these times. And as we pass through solar maximum and activity decreases, we finally begin to get back to normal. There's also an increased incidence of coronary issues and certain types of cancer. So
Oh,
everything in the universe is related, whether we want to admit it or not. We just don't exist in a vacuum. I thought that was really interesting when I
yeah.
read that. Okay, well, that explains all the people getting shot, and the
Yeah.
riots, and the looting and stuff. It's because people really are basically losing their mind.
No, that I mean, we've had that conversation many times with myself and different friends of just like it seems like we are in a different place, but a different mindset, and things that are kind of the norm right now. It's almost like there was a shift overnight,
Yep.
and it it was not like this before, and we've had that conversation multiple times. um, that kinda leads me to, speaking of the weather and stuff, we got a couple questions here. Bob says, "Do you think the energy from storms makes paranormal activity increase during and after a storm?"
I think that that's possible. I mean, just like you've seen instances where, what is it, during full moons, you get more murders and stuff like that. But I think what happens is in storms, like in the case of like things like tornadoes, hurricanes,
Mhm.
I mean, they pretty much tear up the entire environment,
Yeah.
and things that were buried get uncovered. Things get relocated one spot on the earth to another spot. And of course, back to the idea, usually there's a lot of water involved in these incidents, right?
That's true.
Torrential rains, floods, that sort of thing. And then if you put in the water memory thing, and now all this stuff's getting turned up and dispersed everywhere, uh, yeah, if that works, I think that that's what is happening. Something like that, maybe. So yeah, and then not only that, but then you have people that are in an agitated state,
Mhm.
highly emotional state. And when you do that, that's going to affect your perception, it's going to affect your memory. And as we've seen, that's going to affect pretty much everything around you, people, the plants, the animals. So, yeah, I think I could. And that's why.
And so, what do you think about barometric pressure? Because I know I can say that when I'm using my EDI box or using, measuring the barometric pressure, that anytime there's a huge pressure shift, we tend to get activity. And I can verify that Brandon and Mustafa, and then when they were investigating the jail, they measure the barometric pressure as well. And it seems like anytime some type of interesting paranormal phenomena happens, there are pressure spikes. What's your thought on that and possibly why?
Well, my theory on that is I mean, once again we're dealing with frequency and vibration, and you're since everything has an impact on everything else. I think what happens is whatever concentrated source of energy that you've got going on creates kind of like a shock wave,
Mm-hmm.
and if it does, I suppose it's possible it could, have a localized increase in air pressure or wind speed or temperature. Because a lot of times in hauntings you get like sudden cold spots and all this sort of thing. And that actually is temperature is a function of molecular activity. It slows down, it's cold, speeds up, it gets hot. So, that's just my thought on it. You can
Mm-hmm.
you can take it for whatever it's worth, but that's how I would. So
Okay.
yeah, I think it could. It's just like I don't know why there's a spike in gamma radiation. It would be interesting if you could correlate the barometric pressure with the Geiger counter
Yeah.
and see if they coincide with each other. Because one of my theories is when I go to a place, I try to put multiple instruments in the area where I think something's happening. If you got one or two instruments, then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe you got something, but you can't be sure.
Mm-hmm.
Just be a fluke. But if you've got three different measuring devices operating in the same area that measure different things and they all respond at the same time, in my mind, that's pretty much a certainty that you got something.
Yeah. Well, and you know, talking on that about water memory, I'm wondering if, say, you had, let's take a battlefield, a Civil War battlefield, and one that's got water running beside it, and it's taking on that memory, and someone who's a psychic or a medium can go there and they're starting to pick up these impressions and say they're picking up these impressions from the water. If you were to take that water and say take it, I don't know, let's say Tombstone out there and somehow have, if they're picking up the memory from this water and you put it out there, do you think that the psychic would pick, or the medium, or whoever empath that's picking this up would be picking up on the memories of this water from the Civil War battlefield? Or would it sort of start, or do you think it could take on, in a sense, act as a conductor and help with memories from, say, Tombstone, if you're literally transferring this water?
I think in situations like that, I mean, in my mind, anything conceivable is possible. The question
Mhm.
is it probable?
Yeah, yeah,
In my mind, transferring memories from one pool of water over here by taking a small sample and transplanting it to another pool of water over there. Well, just like with reconstituting the HIV DNA,
mhm,
by exposing pure water to a audio recording of the frequency of the original.
yeah,
Uh, but the thing about that is these were isolated samples. Now you're talking about putting it in a bigger sample of
yeah,
something else. So my thought on that is now we're dealing with volume.
uh-huh,
And the question is depending on how strong these signals are that this memory in the water is,
mhm,
are they going to merge and create something different? Or is one going to dominate over the other where you pick up one but not the other? And does that have to do with the volume of water? Like if you've only got
mhm,
2 ounces of this from over there and you're dropping it in a stream over here,
mhm,
does it merge or does the stream, since there's more of it, does it dominate and you just get the stream and the other stuff doesn't? But then by the same token, what if you got flowing water and it has an impression stored in it? Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much the same question, only from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And it carry it to another location.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking what would happen in the case of running water,
Mm-hmm.
whatever's imprinted at that point in time, it's not going to be there.
Right.
It's going to flow somewhere else. However, some of that water was absorbed by the land.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're going to pick that up. And that may be what causes a lot of confusion when
That makes
psychics
sense to me.
go in, because now we've got what is naturally there,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's being polluted by something that came from over there somewhere mixed in with it. And that could result in a lot of the things where people say, well, I went to this psychic, she didn't know what she was talking about because she said so and so, and then I found out such and such.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe that was what she read at the time, but it ain't there.
Right.
It gets complicated.
It does, but I like your thinking on this, and it makes me think because we had a team here on Sunday night, and this guy kept asking me. He had some abilities, and he was like, I keep picking up on hospital, and he was like, "Where's the hospital?" I'm like, "Well, the hospital was 20 miles away," and he's like, "No, no, no, I'm picking up on Civil War hospital." And I said, while we had 2 minor skirmishes that was here, we didn't have a hospital in the area. It wasn't close. There wasn't a makeshift hospital. I'm not sure what you're picking up on. And I said, I'm not saying it's inaccurate, but I'm saying the answer to your question to me is not. I have no answer for that because we didn't have a hospital here. I don't know what you're picking up on. But he was very adamant. And even as we went throughout the jail, he was like, now you're serious? There was not. And I'm like, no. And I'm like, I'm not sure what you're picking up on. So I can see where that could really actually explain some of the confusion, especially when you've got running water versus stagnant water. And all these other variables that play into it, how you could essentially get, I don't even want to say false readings, but get unclear memories based
Yeah, I
on.
mean, they're muddled, they're confused, and
Mhm,
that may very well be it. Is maybe whatever flowed down from that, maybe some of it got absorbed by the environment there, and for whatever reason, it's just on a frequency that he picks that up above
mhm,
all the other stuff.
mhm.
So yeah, I mean, you can't say that the guy don't know what he's talking about. You can't say that
Exactly.
he's lying because you don't know.
Right.
And that's one reason why I like to research the history of places that I
Mhm.
go, because anything that doesn't jive with the documented history, I mark up as being an interesting story
Yeah.
because it can't be validated. The history doesn't support it. But if there's something and the history actually supports that, or even if it just kind of leans in that direction, then I say, okay, maybe we got something. So you have to be really, I think that's the reason why you have to be really careful when you're dealing with mediums, psychics, and sensitives, and all this kind of stuff. Because I think a lot of it depends too on whatever frequency these people are operating.
Mhm. It all
And
plays together.
yeah, it all plays together. It gets really complicated. It's almost like
Mhm.
trying to look at quantum mechanics. It makes absolutely no sense. It's just total chaos. There is order to chaos, but are we smart enough to figure it out?
Right, exactly, and can we handle the results when we figure it out? I often say that when it comes to whether it be cryptids, UFOs, paranormal, if the government was to admit to something, or if we were to get a clear answer of knowing, could we really and truly handle it? I don't think the majority could.
No, probably not. Because, and the reason for that is that goes back to some of the people that I told you about, when I was
Mhm.
in MUFON, who are just adamant that, yeah, I saw an alien.
Mhm.
And and I've had that in paranormal cases. Like I had a lady down in Australia that believed that she was seeing spirits in the trees behind her house, and they were trying to communicate with her. And she says, "I got all these really neat photos." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll look at them." And lens flare, every one of them. But she was insistent that these were spirits trying to talk to her. And I told her, I said, "Look, I said, I know what this is." I said, "When I looked at the first one, I knew what it was." I said, and I played with that because I like to play with low light photography, no flash, high
Mhm.
speed film. When I'm doing serious work, I actually use a 35 millimeter camera
Mhm.
because, you get digital artifacts with
Yes.
digital cameras and stuff, but you've got chemical emulsion on film, cellulose.
Mhm.
If that records something, you're pretty doggone certain that something was there. With a
Mhm.
digital image, who knows? Maybe, maybe not. So
Right.
serious stuff, I use a 35 millimeter.
Yeah.
Hard to find a place to develop film anymore, but it's
Right.
reliable. And I said, I can tell you how to reproduce these things if you will. I said, and you've got some really pretty ones.
Mhm.
I said, and oh no, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You're supposed to be an expert. These are spirits trying to talk to me. And I was hoping you could tell me what they're saying. And I'm being what I said, well, I'm just telling you based on my experience, what I'm
Yeah.
seeing, what it is, and I can show you how to replicate it if you want
Mhm.
to play with it. I said, now what you do with it, you know, that's up to you. I'm just presenting the facts as I see them, and what you do with it, you
Yeah.
know, that's your choice, not mine.
Mhm. Exactly, and that's all you can do in that instance. Um, we're getting close to the bottom of the hour here, and I want to make sure that I get to the last of the questions here. This has been a wonderful conversation, Joseph, and I could go on and on. Bob says, "Do you think the warming of the planet has melted a lot of the water with memory that has spiked things paranormally?"
Well, I hadn't thought about it, but it could. Uh, and in that line, here's something for Bob to think about. What about Antarctica? You know, the continent there sits in places under like 2 miles of ice. So this stuff has been frozen for thousands and thousands of years. So if any of that stuff happens to melt and get to the water, what kind of story is it going to tell?
That's a good point.
So yeah, I mean, and then there's water. It mingles with other water. I mean, since we saw in a lab that it can exchange information, there's no reason to think that water naturally flowing from one place to the other doesn't carry and exchange information. And then the other thing is like your question about taking the water from here and taking it to Tombstone or wherever.
Mhm.
What happens when you merge? Do they merge and create something different, or does
Right.
one wipe the other one out and replace it? It would be interesting to be able to conduct an experiment that would demonstrate that. But so
Mhm.
far, the only thing I've seen is the experiment where they reconstituted DNA
Mhm.
without having the original DNA, and all they did was they recorded the frequency of the original water, where they filtered that down, and
Yeah.
sent it as a sound bite to another lab in Italy, and they exposed water to it for 24 hours. They do the PCR test, and it reconstitutes with 98% accuracy the original infected DNA just from exposing water to sound.
I mean, that's incredible just in and of itself, really, and opens up a lot of I mean, that gets my mind spinning on in so many directions of ways that you could try to test this. Um, and it's kind of like, you know, what Bob is saying here, that it's all the same stuff, just in different forms.
Mhm.
And of course, not just water, but everything, you know. And um, the more I experience with the paranormal, I feel like it's more than just a simple, this is, and this isn't the case all the time, but I feel like that's more than just, you know, grandpa coming to me with, you know, an experience that I'm having, or um, I think it's more complex than just. Uh, I don't necessarily believe in trapped spirits, but
Right.
maybe trapped energy inside of a location because it's a trapped memory, or a
Yeah.
you know,
And I think
trapped
that's
is not even right, but
the reason why sometimes I pick up impressions from objects
mhm,
is because if it was something of particular import to a person, they're going to leave an imprint.
mhm,
That's what I
exactly, yeah,
and maybe you can pick that up by touching
mhm.
it. And but yeah, if you like this, I got a ton of stuff to
Well,
talk about.
I need to have you back to talk about some of this, because I think a lot of it is topics that you know, that we all are interested in, especially as paranormal investigators. You know, and I like seeing how all the sciences, all of the disciplines can explain this, whether you're talking about, you know, quantum physics, or geology, or, you know, biology, that sort of thing. I feel like that when we really dive in deep, we can find some answers, or at least some interesting hypothesis to what we're experiencing. And you know, so I would like to have you back on, and maybe we drill down on some of these other topics. You know, obviously an hour and a half is not long enough to be able to cover all of it and solve all the world's problems, but you know, I think we could maybe pick some specific topics if you're interested, and specifically drill down a little further on some more specifics.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could do that, and that might be a good thing because, like I said, there's so many variables here.
Mhm.
And my thing is sometimes it even confuses and blows my mind because I'm trying to merge all of these sciences and things. And well, it's kind of like physicists looking for the unified field theory, right? The one theory that explains everything. And
One
problem
size
with that
fits
is
all.
you got to know everything.
Right, right. Well, and it always seems like whenever you start to go and go down one direction, and it's like, "Oh, I think I've got it." It's like there's another variable
Yep,
that's thrown in, that
it's
it's
like
like,
peeling an onion.
yeah, so many layers.
But yeah, I mean, if there's something in particular that y'all might want to hash over, let me know. I could
Yeah.
try to put something together. I could talk about this stuff all night long. And, not only some of the theories, but I got a ton of stories that you guys would probably love. And I have a
Well,
video that I'm going to burn it to a DVD and I get a chance, but it was it was in, what was that? What was the name of that place in Kentucky? Sharon, do you remember? My mind just went blank. I just had a senior moment, but there was a place in Kentucky that had been a boys' military school, a Confederate hospital, a railroad depot,
wow.
a I said a Civil War hospital, and it had been a brothel.
Wow, okay.
And Western
Identity
Kentucky,
crisis.
yeah, the Western Kentucky had bought it, and they were going to renovate the building for some sort of science museum or whatever.
Okay.
And the contractors they were hiring kept leaving.
Okay.
They wouldn't stay there. And so that's when I was with Night Stalkers. And
Okay.
that was about a good sized place. That was actually probably about 15 of us That's how big it was, and we still
Okay.
didn't get each other's way.
Wow.
And during that time, and I got a piece of video that just blew us away because me, Barry Gaunt, uh, Robert Ellis, I think Melissa was there. There was like five of us stayed behind after everybody left. We got there at 5 in the evening and stayed till 5 in the morning. And it was wham,
Whew.
bam, thank you, ma'am, all night. Two of the
Love it.
female investigators got molested on the second floor in the process area. They come running down the stairs hollering. And, but we were there by ourselves. There was like a grand staircase in the front, went up to a level, and then there were two smaller staircases that wrapped around to a walkway that went across the main hall,
Okay.
right? And the Mintz Hotel, that was the name of it, in Park
Okay.
City.
Okay.
Anyway, I think it's a bed and breakfast now. I want to go back up there and see if they found anything because we had all kinds of activity. Bear got slammed against the wall when he got brave and provoked. It broke his camera, and it took four of us. You know Barry Gaunt. It
I
took
do.
four of us to pick him up and carry him out. And then, like, like 45 minutes later, he's back in there again. And what I got was Bear was sitting on the staircase. I'm standing across from him, so I know who all the shadows were, from us, but our lights. I know where everybody was at. But off to the right of the staircase was a little window on the wall, which had been like the ticket area when it was a train depot.
Okay.
And we put a flashlight up there. We had what looked like about a 8 or 9 foot shadow figure that was
Wow.
responding on cue from questions, operating the flashlight, and it showed up clear in that video. This went on for 10 minutes. Whoa. Oh, it's got to be one of y'all. No, dude, there's my shadow there. There's Bear. There's the other guys. No, no, no. That's not one of There's only five of us there. We're
Wow.
not number six.
Right.
Y'all would love that. When I finally get around to burning that on DVD, I'll send you a copy of it.
Oh, please. I'd love to see that.
And one of the really interesting things was along about 1 in the morning, we kept having to stop the investigation because about every 2 hours, a freight train come down the railroad track, which was probably not more than maybe 60 feet in front of the building. So we
Okay.
just come to a stop till the train went by because the building's rattling and all this stuff. And one of my cameras that I set up when that train started by, it was about the size of a basketball. It was like this green glowing orb come down the stairs, round the walkway, down the main stairs, and hovered at the foot there. When the train finished, it went back up the same path and disappeared upstairs.
Oh,
Yeah, we got some good stuff.
wow. And then I mean you can go into the whole physics of that with the train and how that occurrence could cause different paranormal activity to happen because of the sound and because of just the act of the train itself going through the
Well,
iron. There's a
well,
lot
I
of
want
different
to get
theories behind that too.
I want to get back down to Saratoga, Texas. We've got family in Texas, and then there's Saratoga. There's a state park not far from their farm, and the road there used to be just a railroad bed.
Okay.
So it's barely wide enough for one truck to go down through there. So if you got somebody coming back the other way, somebody's got to get off the weeds for somebody to go by, right?
Mhm.
Because it's just no railroad bed.
Mhm.
But they got something they call the Bragg Road Ghost Light,
Okay.
and it's just a big orb of light, and it shows up down there. People see it all the time. There's all kinds of records of this thing, stories in the local paper and everything. And people have looked, oh, well, maybe it was headlights, because it's adjacent to a park down there. Maybe it was, nope, not a headlight. We don't know what it is. There are different stories. Somebody's saying it's like, one of the railroad guys with a lantern
Yeah.
walking where the track used to be and all kinds of other stuff. But nobody really knows what it is. And I would like to get back down there and take a look at that and see if I get the impression for it from it. But there was one UFO case that I had up in Kentucky that I thought was ball lightning.
Mhm.
No, ball lightning don't do what this. I don't know what. Yeah, so I've seen a lot, and you can ask my wife because till she got sick, she's a cancer survivor,
Mm.
having problems from the chemo and radiation. But she
Yeah.
used to go out with me, and she was an ordained elder in her church,
Okay.
and stuff would be happening to me and other people, and nothing ever happened to her. She's just sitting there looking at me, laughing. Like I had at Octagon Hall, the dining room,
Yeah.
that big oak door between there and the hallway, right? I'm
Yeah.
standing there one night, we're taking a break about 12 o'clock. Bear sitting in the corner there next to the fireplace, between the door and the fireplace. I'm standing there asking him something that I saw, and they had the door closed. Everything flew open and hit me. And, and then one of the ladies, one of the other investigators that was at the end of the hall, wasn't me, wasn't nobody over there. And Sharon's like, yeah. And one of the guy's wife, she'd not been to one of those. She sat next to Sharon, and she left fingerprints in Sharon's arm. She was giving and said, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" She said, "Oh, you ain't seen nothing. I can tell you about some crap that I've seen happen to my husband."
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
So,
Well well, Joe,
but
I was just gonna say this has just been an absolute pleasure. I've just really enjoyed talking about the theories, and I definitely want to get back with you and have you back on the show because there's so much more we can talk about. And anyone there that's in the audience, if you've got something that kind of that's kind of on your mind now that since we were talking about this, got the old hamster wheel spinning there, and you want us to specifically talk about it, question for Joseph, reach out to me, let me know, and I'll reach out to him and we'll set it up as a topic discussion there because I think there's so much more we could talk about. And I'd absolutely love it if you'd be willing to come back.
oh yeah, I'd love it. Like I said, I could talk about this stuff, but I know I can't. But I could. But I've really enjoyed it, and yeah, if there's anything in particular that you may be interested in that you want me to look at, I'd be more than glad to do
Okay.
that. If you want to focus
Okay.
on it, and just let me know. I'm open. I
All
love
righty.
doing this stuff.
Well, we'll do that. I'll reach out to you because I know I've got some dates open after my season airs, which will be in October. So I'll have some dates open in November going forward. So I think that'd be a good way. So again, guys, let me know any topics that you want us to cover because I and I know I've got some that I'm gonna jot down myself. We got a great show for next week. If hopefully you guys will tune in for that. We'll have Belle Stewart from the Bell Witch House there in Adams, Tennessee. We're gonna be talking about the festival there and some of the stories that she has from there. So hopefully you guys will tune in for that because Bell Witch, that is a Tennessee legend that people from all around the country have heard about that is always very popular, especially this time of year. So thank you all so much in the audience there, and thank you, Joseph. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, you're welcome. I love it.
And if we didn't get to your question, guys, we'll definitely make note of that because I know we had some questions come through that I think maybe we didn't get to. But yeah, until next week, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend and a great week ahead. And we'll see you next Thursday night. So take care, everyone.